Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and specifically welcome back to my masterclass series where I go above and beyond my regular tank reviews for people who already know the basics in a vehicle, who want to do things like get more ace tankers or maybe even want to challenge for their third mark of excellence. Today I'm going to be featuring the tier 10 Japanese heavy tank. It is the Type 5 Heavy, which a lot of people think is a gigantic XP pinata, and while it is, it's also an XP pinata that can punch back, at least occasionally. With regards to performance, the Type 5 Heavy is actually doing pretty good with regards to win ratio. I'd say it's in the top third of tanks, outperforming vehicles like the 5A, the 705A, or even the M5Y. And it's doing this without doing damage, because it's fourth bottom from damage, but with regards to its win ratio, in the top third. And that's because it is a true behemoth with some of the thickest armor in the game, which works really well right up until your opponents dab the 2 key, and then pretty much the whole of the tank goes green. Accordingly, that can make this a very frustrating tank to play, and I would say it's far from meta. However, today I'm going to show you the art of just not caring in this vehicle, and how when you give up tryharding, the tank is actually capable of some pretty scary results. So the first thing I want to talk about with the Type 5 Heavy is the gun that you're going to choose to use. This tank has two competitive guns. It's got a 139.7mm and 152.4mm. One hits for 600, the larger gun hits for 680 with its armor piercing rounds. However, with the derp gun, you can actually load premium high explosive rounds, which end up doing 900 damage with 192mm of penetration. This is a little bit like an FV215B183 or an FV405 shell, which does very well against lightly and even mid-armored targets. However, I just feel that these rounds don't pen enough to justify using them when you take a look at the horrendous aim time, accuracy, and also twice as bad turret traverse dispersion. And on a vehicle that really wants to use all of its equipment slots not on vertical stabilizers, I would never recommend using this derp gun for one main reason, and that is because it doesn't have premium rounds with larger amounts of penetration on its AP. With 252mm of maximum pen, you'd be crazy to want to use that gun in my opinion, rather than getting the 290mm of pen on the 140. I was really struggling with my third mark on this vehicle, trying to do it with the derp gun. Maybe I could if I was a better player, but as soon as I dropped it and used the 140 again, it happened very quickly. And so, while there's absolutely nothing wrong playing with the 152mm if you want to have some fun, the 140 is clearly the better gun on this tank, if only for the premium penetration. Crew-wise, this is as easy as it gets. You've got 6 different members. There's no pressure on any of the crew members, with 2 dedicated loaders, a dedicated radio operator, and the commander as well. Accordingly, even with only like a 4 or 5 skill crew, you can have pretty much everything that you need on this tank. And I think if you were to invest 1 premium crew member on this vehicle, I'd do a driver, a 2nd premium crew member, I'd do a gunner, as those 2 roles do have other skills which you'd quite like to achieve. If you want to use the 152 on this tank, you must have intuition to be able to switch between the armor piercing rounds and the high explosive rounds depending on what target you're shooting. If you're using the 140, I'd probably skip using intuition on this tank and focus on adrenaline rush and safe stowage, repairs and firefighting on your loaders, and then maybe take intuition if you want to have it so you can switch out to a higher damage HE shell on the 140. Equipment wise, I personally like to have 2 builds on this tank. One is durability turbo vents. This is an all-purpose build, and while it doesn't focus on the damage per minute, it focuses on amplifying the hit points of the tank and making the mobility better so you can actually use it. Vents for me is a great flex pick on a vehicle that wants to have the improved ground resistances, the traverse speed, the aim time, and the accuracy that come with vents, and I feel like it outweighs a gun rammer on a tank that does have very low damage per minute. However, I do use a gun rammer for my 2nd build on this vehicle, where I drop the durability device for where I feel like it's going to be a farming game rather than something where I'm going to actually need the extra durability. But in 90% of my battles, I'm going to be using the durability turbo and vents. Field mods wise on this tank, you want to take all terrain suspension to improve your ground resistances, improve the accuracy, improve the view range of the vehicle. Then you definitely want to take the top speed enhancement, but be warned, this might make your crew die a lot, so if you find that happening, then pony up the 10,000 credits, which you've hopefully bought the premium medkit on discount, so you can avoid that. For the final field mod, while it can be very tempting to try and improve this tank's turret traverse speed, don't do it. I once did it, and I got ammo racked multiple times, and considering that it also improves your repair speed, 100% take the internal module durability, because otherwise this thing gets ammo racked a lot of times. And if any of you bought the Type 5 Heavy, played it a few times and hated it, I understand why, because until you get those final 2 field mods, which gives you 2 extra kilometers an hour faster forwards and a 30% increased module durability, this vehicle truly feels painful. But bear with it, because when it's elite, it's a lot better. Alright, so this was towards the latter part of my 3rd mark grind of the Type 5 Heavy. I'm tryharding. I think I'm using Bond Turbo and Bond Vents, and even managed to get a bounty, but not a bounty, sorry, a directive, a vents directive to be able to pump up that cruise skill even more. And as you can see, when you get a turbo on this vehicle, it actually ends up being pretty quick. 32 kilometers an hour for such a large tank that I'd say definitely has better armor than an E100. Not as good armor as a mouse, but this thing is significantly faster than a mouse. A mouse is kind of like about 27 with a build like this. To be able to go kind of about 20% faster than a mouse than a Type 5 Heavy really allows you to make some quite aggressive plays, or at least take some early positions. And so I would thoroughly recommend to take your chances in this tank. Now, full disclosure, if you try hard in this vehicle, and you kind of set your expectations really high, and you're the kind of person who gets angry when your opponents pen you with gold rounds, yada yada yada, this is not the tank for you. It really isn't. However, if you are one of those people, but you're also one of the players out there who wants to try and 3-mark all of your tier 10s, or maybe you just like this tank and you want to try and get a 3-mark in it, you're best to just kind of not care a little bit. I'm not saying play like an idiot. However, it's only when I truly just realized that you have to risk your armor to be able to deal damage in this tank that I started to do a lot better. The worst thing you can do in a Type 5 Heavy is be paralyzed because you realize that your opponents have gold rounds and that they could pen your tank. And so you don't actually push, you don't take the chance, you're not going to get very far. What I found with this tank is that the armor is just like a roll save. It's like rolling a dice. I'd say that the Type 5 Heavy's armor like saves on a 5 or a 6, for example. Even against the gold rounds there, against the 277. It's not always going to work, but when it does, it allows you to be able to maybe surprise your opponents and keep a little bit of momentum up. And so that is my #1 tip for all of you out there with the Type 5 Heavy, is to basically just angle your armor at 45 degrees, not quite, more like about 40 degrees, like this, and just roll the dice. That's what it's about. This tank is about rolling the dice. And if you do that, you can quite often surprise your opponents. This tank's got 10 degrees of gun depression as well, so it's no slouch on a ridgeline. Just be warned that you see how low the gun is and how big this tank's forehead is, so to say, above its tank nose. That is a very easy target for gold rounds to pen. So anything with tier 10 gold, like this SW1 or this 277, you're in for a lot of trouble. Tier 10 tank destroyers are going to absolutely mince you. But hopefully, if you can hit your shots, unlike I did there, and you hit for 600, it doesn't require all that many shots to be able to try and get up to kind of like the 3rd mark level on this tank. You're only having to pen about like 6 or 7 shells in a battle to be able to get your 3rd mark of excellence in this tank. And with also this being a large caliber gun, even with this 139mm, you're overmatching half a decent amount of plates. Unfortunately, not going to be able to overmatch like 45mm plates, but you'll be surprised how many plates in the game are kind of like about 42, 43mm, and you can definitely deal with those. You can see we've managed to get the 277 to run away from us. Every single round that has been fired at my tank this game so far is gold. And you should be firing gold at a Type 5 Heavy. Even the Lerva there, we can see an APCR round, as the shell tracer was more of that reddy purpley color. So you can actually tell what rounds your opponents are firing without them actually hitting your tank. Oh, come on, let's see if we can get a bit of a clutch shot there on the Scorpion G. Not quite enough gun depression over the back. So, with this tank, it's just about angling and forgetting. I will drive out in front of pretty much anything when I play this tank. Apart from like the Jagdpanzer 100 or an FV215B183, unless I know the FV215B183 is kind of firing HE rounds. If they are, then I'll probably take a chance. So I'm sorry about this Yak Tiger kind of just pulled over towards my side there, but I've got to try and get forwards and try and get some shots in. And I can't... One thing that I would also say with this vehicle is it's so big that your friends need to kind of like work around it. Sure, you can sometimes go hold down if you kind of like sit behind your friends. I could probably go hold down on the Skoda T56. But what I find with a vehicle like this is it'll do way better on like an inside corner. and then allow your friends to be able to work around you rather than you try and work around them, especially when you're one of the biggest tanks in the game, one of the heaviest tanks in the game. And now you can see that just the damage adds up. These 600 alpha damage bombs are really brutal. I'm firing a lot of gold in this game because one bounce could mean that I don't get my third mark in it. But the damage per minute, again, without the gun rammer, it's pretty awful. But it's kind of like slow and steady wins the race. But this tank isn't as slow and steady as a mouse. So it's kind of like a halfway point. It's like a mouse that also can drive about 32 kilometers an hour. I'd say this tank and its armor in some ways does better than a mouse will in quite a few scenarios when you're playing against lower tier tanks, because that mobility can allow you to avoid being caught or just be able to like bomb it to be able to get out of a situation. However, the mouse definitely has the better armor in pretty much every single way. If you're an intelligent player and you know how to use the mouse's armor, you will do way better in a mouse than you will do in a Type 5 Heavy. However, the Type 5 Heavy can be fairly forgiving for a player who just can't quite deal with the mouse's angling of its turret armor, or maybe it's just a bit new, but still wants to play that kind of like super heavy juggernaut. Then maybe the Type 5 Heavy will work for you. This is where I really should intuition switch to be able to get a round out against the Scorpion, but again, it's so greedy sometimes to intuition switch with a vehicle like this with that long reload. And you're only gaining 170 damage. So you're only gaining kind of like 25% alpha damage. And to have just that round loaded and to avoid the Scorpion from trying to get away from it just felt like it was the right thing to do. And this is just Type 5 Heavy in a nutshell. Earlier on in the battle, we bounced all their gold rounds. And now later on in the battle, we're bouncing all of their regular rounds. A lot of people just don't actually respect what this thing's armor is. Now, of course, it does have some weak points on the front that you want to take advantage of when you're shooting this thing. I know Wargaming actually gave this thing weak points. We bounced the round from the E3 there. We can go through his lower plate. Again, I'm going to continue to fire these gold rounds because they're so high alpha damage anyway that as long as I can penetrate all of them, especially when you're trying to go for your 3 mark, you're not really losing all that many credits. I'll make it up to you all with a game in my free-to-play account after this one, but I just wanted to show you the Type 5 Heavy in a nutshell, which is just this big meatball that just grinds through. Now, I'm not saying that I'm playing against the best players here, but this is just the Type 5 Heavy. You can't be afraid to get forwards. You can't be afraid to push. Your armor will sometimes work. Your armor will sometimes not work. It's really that simple. And I think players who do badly in the Type 5 Heavy are players who become paralyzed at the armor sometimes not working. But as long as you can kind of just isolate a single opponent, you have 3,350 hit points with this tank. And this is without a bond durability device, which you could get higher if you were to use one, or a bounty durability device. The players who don't do well in this tank are players who are paralyzed at the chance they might lose hit points. This vehicle is like a knife fight. You just got to get in. You got to realize that hopefully you're going to deal as much damage as you are going to take. That is the only way, because you can't avoid taking damage in a vehicle like this. Anyway, spoilers, the LTTP runs away. We don't manage to catch them. That was 8,000 damage with 5,000 damage blocked. Now let's jump across on the Plays for Free account, where I can show you why the Type 5 Heavy is very proficient for dealing through some of the harder missions in the game. Okay, so now regular equipment, no premium consumables, and hopefully a little bit less gold spam. And that's because the pressure's kind of hopefully a little bit off here, or is it? And that is because I'm trying to do HT15 for the Object 260, and I'm trying to go for it with honors. So that means I need to cause, receive, and block a total of 14,000 damage, and there are 23,720 hit points on the enemy team, so I have to do just shy of 6,000 damage to be able to do it with honors as well. So keep tabs on that to see whether we actually manage to get the 260 and the tokens there with the Type 5 Heavy. This vehicle actually one of the best for doing HT15. I think it might be better than the mouse even for doing HT15. It was very simple to do just the primary conditions. However, to do with honors, to be able to get that extra skip, to do the 25 percent damage to the enemy team can be a little bit tricky in a vehicle that just has so low damage potential. I ended up actually doing HD 15 on my main account in a T110E5, would you believe it? But that's back when the T110E5 had the outrageous cupola advantage. Okay, so Type 5 Heavy, a beautiful matchup here, and on mines where nobody has managed to get up on the hill, so I don't have to worry about anything up there. Do we have any team up on the hill? No, everyone's just front on. And a BZ-176, very broken against little tanks. Not so broken against me. Now I don't want to drive alongside and give him my my side armor here. The guy's got 2 marks of excellence, so they can't be the worst player, but had a little bit of a rough round here. I guess the BZ-176 just not quite big enough in this kind of a matchup. And now I'm just going to show you how you can farm either steel walls, or in this case, try and farm to get the Object 260. Look how much damage we have blocked already. 3,200 in the first 2 minutes of this battle, and the party's just getting started. Just look at the bar in the middle of your screen. Well, I say it's not really a bar, it's more of a circle bar. Like a clock filling up here. We're already at 6 o'clock, so to say, with the 6,600 total done. Of course, I don't want to take the damage, although it's the gold round from an S1 there that does manage to go into the vehicle. And this is where this tank's just so darn meaty against little tanks like this. Penetrate the S1, bounce the T30, bounce the gold round from a Skoda, bounce the gold round from the M4190 from the side. And now, slowly but surely, we're up to 10,500. We're actually getting close now to maybe doing HT15 for the Object 260. And I have to admit, in this situation, I'm kind of just sitting out in front of my opponents. But you're going to notice that when you sit out in front of your opponents and you play Type 5 Heavy Scout, from a marks perspective, we're already up to like 5,600 combined. Sorry, yeah, 5,600 combined inside this matchup. Unfortunately, module damage. We've lost our gun. Not sure if I have armor on my gunner, and I've lost another one of my crew members. And that definitely happens when you start to have all of the field mods and you make your crew 20% more vulnerable. So I'm coming around and I'm realizing, yo, this was too greedy, and I lose a big amount of hit points, these 75. But the reason why I'm doing this is because I'm hoping that, oh, nice overmatch opportunity there, right up into the flaps, which I believe are only about 40 millimeters thick on these 75, so you can't expose that to this kind of a gun. But what I'm doing is I'm trying to get closer towards the 6,000 damage that I needed to deal, and that's why I was kind of going for greed there. And when there's only 8,000 hit points left on the enemy team, and I need another 2,000 damage to be able to do the quarter of the amount of hit points the enemy team has, because I've got to get to 6k. So unfortunately, I have to kind of give up that scenario. I can't really cross anymore, not with 1,100 hit points, even though I did say Type 5 Heavy needs to be played like a bit of an idiot, just kind of drive out in front of people and like forget about it. You can't really be that stupid in a Type 5 Heavy and also expect to get away with it. Hopefully we managed to catch this artillery here. He's just around the corner. There we go. Nice, 4,480. All we need is another 2 shots if they roll good, 3 shots if they don't roll good, because I haven't managed to hit any blind shells so far. But this is actually an outrageous game. If we're including like the blocking into the mix, we're already up to we're already way above the 14k that we needed to deal in this game, and it's the battle's still young. So that's the 260, the primary condition unlocked, but like, will we manage to do the secondary? We need 6k, so I want to start poking. But even with 10 degrees of gun depression, I can see the T30 finally fires, but I don't manage to quite catch them around the corner. If I drive down there, I don't need to survive, but it's irrelevant now of whether I survive or not. It's just all about doing that 6,000 damage. You can see we get another 474 spotting on the T30. But I'm realizing now that I've got to fire a couple of shots in. I think that BZ-176 is going to play. He does 800 and loses 1,270. But you know what? I think I've got to learn a little bit from him. And I realize, yo, I'm not going to do 6k unless I play. So we land 1 in on the Type 5 Heavy. Somehow I kind of bounce there a little bit, and I actually take no damage. Unfortunately, he puts a round into me, dealing 600 to me. And I've got to put in a couple of shots now. So I decided I'd rather shoot the E75 first, because the Centurion's going to shoot him. So I actually get full 641. So all I need now is another 350 damage into this Type 5 Heavy, and I got it. Look, there he is, 950, 950. We got it, we got it, still 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 got it. Oh, no. The Centurion Action 10 against the last little bit. And unless I can somehow manage to destroy both of these tanks now, we're not going to quite do the 6k. We're going to fall just 300 short of what I needed. And there's no chance now with the Kunze-Panzer being at what level he is. That was it. Close, but no cigar. Still, this is an outrageous game. We're talking about if we were to combine everything together, it's over 18,000 combined. Now, of course, we've got to take the 10k away, which would still make it 8k combined for a Type 5 Heavy. That's not bad on a free-to-play account. So in the games that you've seen, I haven't really been challenged all of that much. I'm going to be definitely challenged in this game, pushed to the limit in the Type 5 Heavy. So I'm using regular equipment here, regular consumables apart from the premium consumable that I'm using. This was before I really thought about going for the third mark in this vehicle. Which, spoilers, did happen, but I'm not going to be showing it today because it was just a really boring 4,500 damage combined. You know, I think I ended up on Stajanki or something and just went for it. This vehicle, it was probably one of the easier 3 marks I've ever done in World of Tanks for some reason. And that's because inside a loss, it's just got more than enough armor and hit points to do a substantial amount of damage. And I think once you've got all of the field mods on it and you slap a turbo on it, it's surprisingly fast. I really cannot stress how different a vehicle like this or the mouse feels from when it has no field mods to when it has all of its field mods. Right, so we're playing on Mountain Pass. This is kind of like the perfect map for a Type 5 Heavy because it's all kind of like frontal fights with no crossfire. And remember, this tank's armor, it is all centrally focused. The last thing that you really want to do in this vehicle is to drive into a crossfire, because as soon as you do, your turret becomes fairly weak from the side, awful from this kind of an angle, and your side armor becomes absolutely horrendous as well when you do expose it. So it's all about kind of just having your tank angled like this against your opponents, while having your turret definitely facing forwards. There's no real point in angling the Type 5 Heavy's turret that much. You don't really make too much of a difference because it is just so flat. Unless they're firing heat. If they are firing heat at you, then there is a point in angling, because remember, heat doesn't have any normalization, so it will not be able to balance out 5 degrees of turret angling. And remember, if you do angle the turret too much, then you're just making your side turret really weak. So if you're playing against armor-piercing rounds, almost no point. You might as well just keep your turret directly facing your target so you can be able to get your rounds out more quickly. Against APCR rounds, possibly. Heat rounds, definitely want to angle at least a little bit just to be able to make that front a little bit thicker. But let's be honest, people are just going to be shooting your weak point as soon as you start to get a little bit sneaky. So raise your gun if you have an opportunity. Okay, so we're just going to make our way back to base. 2 juicy heavy tanks here who have managed to get themselves isolated. A lot of that happens in Mountain Pass. I feel like Mountain Pass is one of my preferred maps from that perspective. You do manage to get like a lot of one-on-one fights, or at least one-on-two fights. It's not usually just a whole glut of the enemy all coming for you at the same time. It's so important to keep the Type 5 Heavy moving, which is one of the reasons why this smaller gun is so much better than the bigger gun. To have that better turret traverse dispersion, as well as the better aim time, you can actually just not sit still for your opponents. You'll see how I'm advancing at this 60 TP. This is optimal how we're advancing. He tries to fire a heat round at my tracks, panicking, missing the corner weak point. Where you want to shoot the Type 5 Heavy is right here on the corner. He fails it, and now he's got like, what is it, 160 tons or 150 ton tank now bearing down upon them. I do 364 ramming damage, connector shell afterwards. That is 1,000 damage that we dealt there with the combined ram and the shot. And just like that, up to 2k in the Type 5 Heavy. So now that we've managed to secure the base, we can see that our opponents are starting to push both across the west, although the CS-63 just finished off the 50M, and they've got a 268 version 4 on the bridge. This tank is so slow that your map awareness is so much more important in a tank like this than it is in a light tank or a medium tank. A light tank or a medium tank, you can be a little bit slower with your reactions. I'm not saying you should be slow with your reactions, but there's no kind of forward planning with regards to how you want to drive around the map, because you can just change the way that you're planning to go in a heartbeat, and it doesn't really make too much of a difference. I see this Type 5 Heavy wants to go up on the hill and snipe. That's okay, but I'm more interested in still defending the bridge at this stage and keeping this FV215B and the Manticore alive, because if we give up them, for no gain, then while the hill defense is always a nice thing, you can end up just not actually having damaged your opponents enough to win that kind of a hill defense. Plus, if we've got 2 TDs here, that means they're not really going to be coming from the west, which will make my opportunity to engage the 2 TDs the enemy team have over our side of the bridge even a little bit easier. So again, forward planning in a vehicle like this is oh so important, because while you're not as slow as something like a mouse, you're definitely still slow. So you need to know where you're going before you need to be there, or at least before you have to be there to be able to start unloading shots. So I loaded an HE shell there for the FE405. Switch back to the AP for the 268 version 4. End up just firing AP against the FE405, which isn't the worst deal. I'm going to use the medkit there because now I'm going to be getting safe away from them. We bounced the gold round from the 268 version 4, and I'm just going to apply some pressure with this FE215B183, who finishes off the FE405, and then suddenly their push on the bridge doesn't look too smart anymore. I'm going to try and get into cover here for the FE215B183. I want to shoot the Badger, and I was actually willing to tank a shot from the Object 268 version 4 to be able to deliver that shell. Luckily for me though, my Type 5 Heavy friend is also here, and this is where just 2 big fat Japanese derpy tanks just get going. I'm not sure if I absorbed the shell there from the Badger. Looks like he is firing, I'm not sure if that was gold. It looked like it was a gold tracer there, but I'm not sure if he's firing AP now or if he's switching. So in this kind of a situation, I should be able to go through the upper hull on the Object 268 version 4. A lot of people don't actually realize that the upper hull armor on the 268 version 4 is not all that good. It's all based around the 70 degrees of angling. So if you've got heat rounds, you can actually do very well against it. And if you've got armor piercing rounds when you're slightly above, you can also do well as well. The E3 wants me to fall back, but that's just because he wants to sit up on the hill and just be lame, to be honest with you. Just let the Type 5 Heavies fight. I'm not saying that the Type 5 Heavies should get themselves isolated, but in this situation, surely we can just deal with our opponents. I'm really surprised by that block there. It was green. It must have just changed the angle just after he fired and started moving there. And unfortunately with the Type 5 Heavy, when you start to ricochet, things can go oh so wrong. You've got to have a lot of confidence with your shell and realize that each shell matters, because as soon as you fired, you've got a very long reload compared to your opponents. Looks like they were gold shells from the Badger there. The shell tracer was a giveaway, and then the confirmation when he managed to shoot me just shows that they were loading APCR rounds. So my Type 5 Heavy is pushing, and this is where you would say it's like cruelty to Object 268 version 4, but it's a 268 version 4. It deserves it, right? And again, like, while these are the better games I've ever had in the Type 5 Heavy, they aren't that cherry-picked. They're cherry-picked a little bit. They're cherry-picked to be able to show you what this tank's capabilities are and to give you some food for thought about the way that you should play the Type 5 Heavy. But we haven't lost that many hit points. We're already up to 5,200 combined. Again, this was one of the easiest 3 marks I've ever had in a Tier 10 Heavy. I'd say that the mouse was a little bit easier, but that was back in the day when the mouse was not nearly as good, and I think the mouse could actually be quite a challenging 3 mark now. The Type 5 Heavy is definitely played by casuals, and I think that one of the reasons why the Type 5 Heavy has a very easy 3 mark is because of the derp gun. And seriously, you can use the derp gun and maybe you can have a good giggle when you occasionally do that 900 alpha damage bomb, but you are so darn useless in a variety of situations. Like if I'm fighting the Object 268 version 4 and I have the derp gun, not only do I have the worst aim time, accuracy, and the gun handling is massive on the turret reverse dispersion. That's if I can manage to pen, because I got to fire those regular AP rounds unless I somehow manage to flank the tank, and even if I do, those HE rounds are definitely not guaranteed. So we fired a blind round there. Let's see if the 114 SP2 appears on still their 2/3 of hit points. But I think that the people who use the derp in the Type 5 Heavy really bring down the average. So I'm communicating with my Type 5 Heavy here, telling him that we should push the bridge. And I'm going to say that stay behind me, because he's very much not very healthy, right? So if I can manage to tank for that Type 5 Heavy, we can combine our forces and turn into some mega mecha. That's going to be like a Type 10 Heavy or a Type 5 Heavy. Type 10 Heavy. Whatever. The opportunities are endless, as anyone who has watched mecha films or anime will know, right? Anyway, when our forces combine, we will smash the enemy, possibly. Let's see if he's using a turbo and whether he's got the field mods. Always surprises me with how fast this tank is. Nevertheless, I think pushing the bridge here is the correct play because we've only got 5 minutes left in this game. You'll see I actually pulled over there to cover my friend. Totally worth it there. I keep his gun in the game, and I've given the Type 5 Heavy on my team now the confidence to cross the bridge. I might need their gun to improve my terrible damage per minute. Unfortunately, the Manticore's wanting to be able to make a sneaky play here, and our artillery wanted to push forwards. I think our artillery actually hit the Manticore here, and now the Type 5 Heavy is going to turn around to be able to deal with the Manticore, who's now in a bit of a sticky situation where they're probably locked down by the T-110E3. I'm going to be loading an HE round here. I don't think the 114 SP2 will have made it back to base, and I really want to take it to this gorilla, but we're not sure where they've gone. I thought that they must have turned left and gone through there, and there they are. There's the gorilla. Aiming at me, I bounce the heat shell. He doesn't bounce my HE shell, however. Now I know that one artillery is down that alleyway, and I do 890 damage to the gorilla. Now putting us up to 5,500 damage. And what I wanted to do in this situation is just pressure the base. I can't trust those 2 TDs to push out. And if I can force my opponents to come to me, well, then I can destroy them in glorious close quarters combat. And quite often with the Type 5 Heavy, that's how you have to play. Use your mobility to create a pincer, or at least check your opponents, and then force them to have to move in ways they perhaps didn't want to. So that Type 5 Heavy who I protected on the bridge kills the gorilla. Unfortunately, they died to the 114 SP2, but that is 2 amazing things. Firstly, they killed the gorilla. Secondly, they tell me where the 114 is. And they also even ping the map to say where they were. They pinged the G6 area, the J4 area. Sorry, no, they pinged the J4 area. So if they pinged J4, that to me suggests that they were saying that he shot them from that alleyway. So I'm not sure if even the 114 will be able to make it back in time. It's going to be quite an awkward fight with the 114. The 114 still hasn't been spotted since I blind fired them. I hope they're going to be on 2/3 of their hit points. Clearly the Manticore will come after us as well, and there we go, there's the Manticore. So in this situation, he resets us, which is irritating. But I want to try and stop him from being able to get too much behind me here. But we'll see that slope, that if I can just wedge my butt up this slope now, he's not going to be able to get past me. And now I don't want to turn the other way, and yeah, good luck trying to reverse, and he's just got to hope that I suck. But luckily, one time I didn't suck at World of Tanks. And while we took 400 damage, that is a Manticore out of the game. My 2 TDs still sitting in base with 3 minutes left on this game. I didn't think we could find the arty and the 114 and the other arty, so I decided that, like the way the FP405 says, good job. Mate, do you think you could leave base as well? Or maybe they're just thinking they're going to protect it because the 114 or the Manticore could come after them. Alright, so here we go. It's a duel. 114 SP2. I bounce his gold. He doesn't bounce my gold. I'm going to pretend like I want to come after him. And in fact, I think that ramming him in this situation would probably be best. But unfortunately, because I don't use the gun rammer, I'm actually going to have a worse rate of fire than the 114. So in this situation, I decide to shoot the arty. In retrospect, I think it would have probably been more sensible to shoot the 114 SP2. And I think that's a significant misplay by me. I thought that I had way more hit points left as well, and unfortunately, because he rolled high and the artillery didn't low roll, I'm actually now not able to take a hit from the 114 SP2. And that is very awkward. So I made a misplay here. I should have undoubtedly shot the 114 SP2 twice in that situation and then killed the artillery afterwards. Although it would start be getting hairy as to whether I would even be able to kill the artillery in that scenario. I miscalculated how many hit points I had left, and I got destroyed in 2 shots by the 114 SP2's high rolls and the artillery. Nevertheless, it was... Hold on, get out of the way, QuickyBaby. 8... BAM! I can't... It was like... Oh, there we go. 8,000. 8,600. Nearly 8,700 combined. Spoilers, my team are going to really struggle here. They kill the arty, they don't find the 114 SP2 because they both try and blind fire the bushes instead of advancing. Ouch. And strangely enough, games like these, I'm not saying they were happening every single battle. Sometimes you do feel like you go up and down with this tank, but definitely more up. And then eventually I ended up with my 3rd mark of excellence in a very unremarkable game for the Type 5 Heavy. The Type 5 Heavy, as I said during the gameplay, one of the easiest 3 marks and a really good starting position for any of you who maybe want to try and get on the marking bandwagon. It has currently got on the European server the 3rd lowest requirements of any of the tier 10 heavies. even when you consider that it's actually in the top third with regards to its win ratio. And this will purely be because the derp gun drags it down. Some people go in and just play the Type 5 Heavy for fun, and that's absolutely fine, I should say. If you want to play the tank for fun, all the power to you. However, I would recommend at least use that 140 to see what the vehicle is truly capable of, then put the derp gun on and have a good time with the tank. Personally, for me, the tank is a good enough time without using the derp gun. As the armor and hit points, this thing is surprisingly meaty and ends up being this kind of freak that when you just stop tryharding in it, could actually be a good time, at least occasionally in games like these. So, all in all, would I recommend the Type 5 Heavy? No, I wouldn't. I think there are more fun and better tanks to play. The mouse is better, and I think the mouse is more fun. Some of you might like the side scraping of the Object 705A, but the Type 5 Heavy, it can really surprise your opponents if it is played well, and there's nothing more rewarding than playing a tank which is considered to be an XP pinata by the community and surprising a few sweaty players. Anyway, ladies and gents, boys and girls, that was my masterclass on the Type 5 Heavy. Really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did and want to see more of these in the series, then make sure you give it a thumbs up and let me know in the comments down below. But if you hated it, make sure you also let me know by giving the video a thumbs down. And let me know in the comments what you think about the Type 5 Heavy. Do you think it's an absolute worthless piece of trash? Or are you a very unusual Type 5 Heavy enjoyer? And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.